working on was I guess a silk wrap. Okay. Silk wrap. And the
So let me introduce Ronisha. She has joined us today to do some guest speaking for our students.
Raise your hand if one day you're super motivated to take on the world and tackle your goals, and the next day you're like, what is the point? Exactly. Have you ever even felt almost triggered by the question, how are you, or what's new? Like you're not doing enough, or you're not where you said you were going to be by a certain time. There is honestly a ton of questions that come at us every single day. One question that I ask myself often is, what the heck am I doing? How about you guys? It's just like, I cannot believe that, I said I was going to do this and I'm doing it. Or I can't believe that I had the audacity to think that I could do this. And it's just like, wow. But the thing that no one tells you is that no one knows what they're doing. No one feels 100% certain. The timeline is always off. Either things are coming too early, and then you get the whole imposter syndrome thing, or too late. But you know what? At the end of the day, what matters is that you did it, that you got it done in spite of the obstacles and the barriers, despite whatever doubts that you felt, no matter what. We have to get over ourselves, our fears, our shoulds, our wants of having the answers for everyone but ourselves. I was thinking about this a little bit before I got here. I'm just like, where does all of this come from? Like, why do we feel all of these things inside in response to the questions that come at us? And like, I realize I'm not an expert, so I don't know. But for me personally, it really started with a question that's very, very simple. It's very innocent on the surface. It's just a question that a lot of adults ask children usually. What do you want to be when you grow up? Not many kids really dwell on this. I think also when an adult asks you this question, it's sort of like a compliment. It's like, wow, this person just really is excited and sees some type of potential in you, and they want to see where you want to go in life. But for me, it actually weighed on me, and I thought about this a lot because it was the one question that I didn't know the answer to. And I was the type of little girl, this is me as a little girl. I was the type of kid who always liked to know the answer to a question. I was the honor roll kid in the front of the class, always raising my hand. And so even if I didn't know the answer, I knew how to find the answer. But this one was the one question that I couldn't answer. And what really bothered me is that when I didn't know the answer, then people are trying to answer it for me. They're trying to assign different careers to me. Oh, you should do this, you should do that. And that felt even more uncomfortable. I'm just like, no, I don't know is my answer, and that's it. And then also, I think I sort of witnessed what happens when you don't figure out the answer to that question through my mom. And I love my mom. She's super amazing and powerful. She's a single mom of 2 kids, me and my brother. But I recognize that she didn't love what she did, and that she went to work because she had to make money, and that was it. And I didn't want that for my life. And so I was just like, I have to figure this out sooner rather than later. So I think even at a young age, now thinking back about like that, literally like felt it in my chest like a weight. And I realized that I was just feeling the weight of my purpose. I was feeling like there's something big out there for me to do, to achieve. I don't know how to articulate it yet, but I need to figure this out. And I remember being 8 years old, and if you listen to a lot of people's stories, a lot kind of happens at 8 years old, I think. And I'm sitting on the ladder of the bunk bed in my brother's room. We shared a room, so I had the top bunk because I was older, and he had the bottom bunk. And I'm watching TV, and it sounds so weird to say this, but I literally felt Like someone was telling me, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be on that TV screen one day. And I didn't really understand what it meant at the time. I'm just like, okay, so that means I'm going to be an actress or a singer, because that's literally the only type of people that you saw on TV, celebrities. And I just really just like felt a strong calling, and I'm just like, yes, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an actress or a singer. But what I realize now looking back is just, it was really something telling me that I was supposed to use my influence for a purpose, and influence using media, because TV is media. And it didn't really start to make sense to me until I turned 16. I took a journalism class by accident. Literally, like, just had to fill up my schedule. It was something that the English department offered as an elective. And I'm like, okay, I'll just take this journalism class. Didn't think anything of it, but then that is when everything clicked. I was always called nosy. I was always, like I said, relentless when it came to finding the answers to questions. I remember when AOL first came out. This was around 99, 2000, and we first had the chance to get the internet and search for things in our own houses, and I was just obsessed. But I didn't realize that those were actually skill sets, because they came naturally to me. And often the things that come natural to us that are our gifts, we don't recognize them as gifts because they come naturally for us. It was actually a teacher that really pushed me in a direction. He said, you're actually good at this. And I'm like, wait a second, these are actually skill sets, the things that come naturally to me. My nosiness is curiosity. My fascination with research and relentlessness, that is something that you need as a journalist to search for truth and tell stories. And that is when I literally hit the ground running. It set a spark. And I started my professional journalism career at the age of 16. And I was relentless when it came to pursuing opportunity, despite what the rules said. And I did whatever I could to become the best so that I could become undeniable. And I was at press conferences, on the red carpet. I covered a press conference, I remember this was very memorable for me, with Jay-Z at the United Nations announcing a new water program he was starting. And no one gave me permission to do these things. I didn't wait for permission. I just invited myself. And I would keep doing that throughout my life until someone told me no. And the thing is, you cannot wait for someone to invite you. You can't wait for permission. You have to invite yourself. And, you know, the worst thing that people can tell you is no. And most of the times they won't. But like I said, I'm a girl from Brooklyn. I had no connections in the media world. But what I did is just surrounded myself with people that encouraged me and believed in me. And I also studied and did the work so that when I got into those rooms, despite being the youngest person or maybe the only person of color, I still felt like I belong here because I did the work beforehand. And I also really believe that when you're led by passion and purpose, you do whatever it takes. You take initiative to make your dream happen no matter what. So that's easy to say, right? But harder to live. And even back then, when that fire of purpose and passion was first lit within me, I had no idea. I'm like 16. I'm just like, oh, great. I found my purpose. Now I'm going to get a job on TV. I'll do that for a few years and start my own company. So if I thought, okay, if only I do X, Y, and Z, the full picture from my life will come together like, bam. But, and also I was looking to like Oprah to set the standard. So like, she did that. She got a TV reporting job and then she got her own network. Like, that's how it happens. But now what I've learned 13 years later is that you can do everything right. You can be the best, but still, sometimes things just don't come together. And still, sometimes life will get in the way. And so the path that I thought was going to be straight was super crisscross, zigzag, up and down. But what kept me going is my purpose. And the idea that whatever was in front of me was small compared to how big my mission was. And that is what I use to propel me forward, that root of recognizing and knowing my purpose. And you guys know this. You are here today. You've moved mental mountains, I think, to be here today. And so that already shows that you embody a no matter what mindset. And so I'm here today to really encourage you to use that mindset as your compass as you work to transition into the next phase of your personal and professional careers. So my motto that grounds my life work is no one ever slows her agenda. And it highlights the importance of getting out of our own minds and out of our own way in order to actualize our ambitions. And I came up with it going back to that 16-year-old girl running around New York City, covering stories, doing man on the streets, like in Harlem on 125th Street, grabbing people like, hey, I have a camera, I want to ask you this question. I literally just needed something to put on my business card. And I'm like, I need something because I don't have a company. I don't work for anybody. And I was alongside reporters from like CNN, NBC, ABC. And I'm like, I'm just me. But so I just came up with this acronym. And it was like a mantra that also embodied the spirit of my ambition. No one ever slows her agenda. And it was really helpful because it also helped me to hold myself accountable, and it helped people to remember me. I have a very uncommon name, Ranisha. It's not easy to remember. And so people will remember Nisha and they remember that phrase. And so that's just like how I came up with that. And what I've learned also is just like changing your mindset is so important, having that mantra or motto to keep you going, because sometimes we allow our minds to create excuses for sleeping on ourselves and silencing our ambitions. Have you ever done this? Like before you enrolled in this program, for instance, did you say, oh, I don't have time, or oh, it's too late for me to pursue my college education, or oh, I have too many commitments and responsibilities already, like why would I add more to my plate? What I've learned is that fear will make you think that you're not worthy of your weighty dreams. Fear is something that I've learned to embrace actually now over the years, because on her agenda, we speak a lot to women who are CEOs, women who are on television, women who are running schools, and they seem like they have it all together. Like they don't have any fear, they're fearless. And that's something that's promoted a lot, right? Fearlessness. But what I've learned is they all feel that fear, but they do it anyway. And I think that is something that really helped me whenever I was faced with a big moment or something that I felt like I wasn't ready for, that imposter syndrome, right? Is knowing that the power within me is greater than the fear before me, and feeling that fear and doing what I have to do anyway. When you have a dream or a goal that is in sync and in line with your calling, it is literally your responsibility to create a plan and honor your agenda. But how, right? Like, how do we learn to articulate our agenda, to quiet our minds, and to make things happen? What I've learned actually is business and professional success is not isolated from our personal lives and our personal selves. And often I go to things or I hear people talk about how they got to where they are, and they don't mention those personal moments of struggle. It's like, great, you started a company and you raised $1 million, so like everything was perfect at home. And I've noticed often, like when we have professional highs, sometimes things are going great and amazing in my professional life, and then my personal life is taking a turn or it's in shambles. And this literally happened to me in the most extreme way in 2016. It literally was the worst year of my life. So the beginning of that year had the exciting opportunity to speak at the United States of Women Summit hosted by Michelle Obama and her team at the White House. Amazing opportunity, literally like a super high point. And the funny thing is, I invited myself. And you probably aren't surprised by that from like the earlier parts of my story, but like I literally texted a friend, and then the next week I was at the White House. So what happened was I actually spent a lot of time on social media, and I noticed that a lot of my peers were going to the White House for forums and panels and conferences, and this is during the Obama era, and I'm like, what is happening at the White House where all of these amazing people are getting invited? And I'm doing work that empowers women and girls. I would love to have the visibility and the power of the White House in order to elevate what I'm doing. So I sent a text to a friend. He's someone that I went to college with, actually. And he witnessed when I first started my company, because I started it in 2008 in college. And we're not BFFs, but he saw, because I was always talking about what I want to do. So I was always articulating my agenda. And so he, as soon as I texted him, immediately put me on an email with the woman right under Valerie Jarrett, who worked for the White House Council for Women and Girls. The next day we're on the phone. She's literally walking between meetings. And she's like on the phone, she's like, sorry if it's loud. I'm like in the hallway, but what are you doing next week? And I'm like, well, whatever I'm doing, I could change my plans if it involves the White House. And she's like, okay, well, we're doing a forum about building solutions for millennial women. We want you to do a talk. I'm like, great, awesome, I'll do that. Hung up the phone. I'm like, what the heck am I gonna say? Like, I only have a week, and they want me to speak about a whole generation of women. And I was questioning myself, but I still did it, and I survived. And not only did I survive, a few weeks later is when the summit happened, the United States of Women Summit. And I thought they would invite me just because of the company that I have. I have a company that empowers women, and this is a women empowerment summit they're putting together. So I'm like, okay, I'll get a ticket. I get an email, and they actually want me to be on a panel. Great. Next week, I get another email. They actually moved me to moderator without even asking me or discussing it with me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, first of all, who told them that I moderate things? And obviously it's the White House, they know everything. But I was just so out of my mind afraid. So many things were thrown at me that changed. Like, the panel started late. They had 9 people on my panel, but I still did it. And I did it because I recognized, like, it's not about this fear. It's not about me feeling like I'm gonna mess up. It's about who's going to be on the other side of that stage or that podium that's going to be impacted and affected by me. And then who is going to feel inspired to do what they're scared of because they saw me, a Black girl from Brooklyn, New York, up there doing something like moderating a panel at the United States of Women Summit. Who has seen that before? No one, because that was the first time it happened. So what I realized leaving that event filled with women from all over the country and the globe is that this is an important moment for us women to seize the day, to define ourselves individually, but come together collectively in order to create a shift that changes how women and girls are seen in this world. The reality is that we live in a global society that still undervalues and is unkind to women and girls. Sometimes we're undervalued and overlooked in our own homes. Sometimes it's in the classroom. Sometimes it's in the boardroom. And this reality that we exist in today can negatively impact young girls' perception of their own possibilities. And it also can cause imposter syndrome even in the most talented and capable professional women. But surely, time is up for all of this. It is imperative for us as women to make it our life's work, to actualize our dreams and close the gap between our ambition and our achievements. Namely, because when we do the unimaginable in our personal lives, it creates pathways for the next generation of women and girls to achieve without making excuses and to excel no matter what. I touched on a little bit earlier about that I can't even say the word, juxtaposition between professional success and those professional highs and your personal life and those personal lows. And I've really noticed, like, in this world, we fight battles every day that are seen and unseen. Like, you can look at someone and think that everything is perfect in their world and not know what they're fighting. Internal insecurities, external barriers, microaggressions, and just outright sexism. And we're doing this all, like I said, while dealing with our personal lives. So I realize also family and friends play a huge impact on that. And we can't control other people, right? I'm sure you probably realize that by now. You try to change people, you try to impact them and change what they do. But what we can control is how we respond and how we react to people and to things. So in 2016, the same year that I spoke at the White House, my mom and my stepdad went through a very painful divorce. Literally overnight, someone that I thought really cared about me, someone I thought that raised me pretty much, became toxic. And the home that I grew up in fell apart, and I lost that place that I called home. And in response to that, I took an opportunity to move to a whole different city. And it was a business opportunity. I moved to Atlanta. So this business opportunity was supposed to bring significant funding to my company. But when I got there, I was being asked to completely change my company and create a whole new thing. And it was completely against what I believed in. And I actually ended up stepping away from that opportunity. I was also told to my face that my company was not worth investing in. And I realized in hindsight now that that person was completely unqualified to make that type of assessment. And they're pretty much someone that I thought was actually like a great person or very like accomplished entrepreneur, but it ended up not being the case. And I stepped away from that opportunity despite having uprooted my whole life, literally moved to Atlanta. But I stuck around in that city for a little bit. Even though I had to get over that, I had to reestablish my confidence in my company, because like someone that I respected and admired was like, this is not something that's worth investing in. So I stayed around in Atlanta just to see if I wanted to live there. It's cheap. It's like easy. It's like a city with a lot of young people. So I'm like, maybe I could live here. Because like I said, I couldn't go back home. And I ended up learning some very, very hard lessons while I was there. But my purpose really empowered me to fight back and to stand my ground and keep going despite those pitfalls, despite those low moments. And I really, really, in that year, especially with all of those low points and high points, which can make you feel so crazy, recognize that as women, that we are super incredible and powerful when the fire of purpose and passion is lit within us. So a couple of months later, I just packed it up. I was just like, Atlanta is not for me. I'm going back to New York. And this was in December of 2016. At the top of January 2017, I woke up to the news that I was listed as a Forbes 30 under 30 in 2 categories, the media and the dorm room founders category. So that moment really just reaffirmed that like whatever I'm going through, the good and the bad, is not in vain. And after that moment, my life literally changed forever. So I want to share a little bit from what I've learned over the years of what are the keys to achievement. So I have like 6 little talking points and takeaways that really sort of serve as an outline to how I got to where I am and continue to push forward no matter what. So the first thing is finding your why, which, as you probably heard during my story, it's the reason that you're doing something. It's not exactly what you do. So what I do is I'm the CEO of a media company, but my why is bigger than that. It's, to change representation, to change the ratio of women in power and leadership. And so knowing that and keeping that why in mind helps me to get over myself when I'm feeling doubtful, when I'm feeling anxiety, when I'm feeling like this task is too big for me to achieve. It's just like, who am I to say that this is too big for me to achieve? It would be absolutely selfish of me to give in just because I feel this way, when I have so many lives that I could change and impact if I just could swallow this feeling and just do what I have to do. What also helped me is just creating that mantra and really articulating my agenda, because that serves as a reminder to myself and also to my community. When I came up with that phrase, it got to a point where at first I had to explain it to people, introduce myself to people, and then it got to a point where my reputation and my motto sort of preceded me, and people would say it to me. They're like, oh yeah, no one ever sold her agenda, kind of like half joking a little bit, but it still helped, because if I ever came to them and I said oh, I applied to this and they rejected me, it's like they would just remind me do you know, you say that you don't let anything stop you, so you need to just figure out a different way to do it. And so sharing your mission with others is a key part of the journey, because you need those accountability partners to help you along the way. And you have to be relentless too. Thanks, Sarah. This is Sarah, guys. You have to be relentless. You will be ignored. And that is a harsh reality, but it's something that you just, if you already have that in mind, that you're just going to have to be relentless about it, it's not going to phase you. So you can't rely on that one phone call. Oh, I called and I left a voicemail, they didn't call me back. Or that one email, like, oh, I emailed them and they ignored me. They didn't ignore you. We're all busy, right? We all have competing priorities. And so you have to follow up. You have to be relentless. So this picture actually, it's funny, I didn't even realize that this picture was going with this point. But this woman right here, her name is Vanessa DeLuca. She's the editor-in-chief of Essence magazine. And so I did this panel, and this was about actualizing ambition. I did this in 2015. And this was the first year that I did a large number of events connected to my company. We do all these live events called Her Agenda Live. So I never met this woman before, but we feature her on our website, but it didn't come through me because we have this network of contributors. So literally one of my contributors had a connection to her, and she basically did the interview. She handled everything. But I did search in my email, and I had her email address in my search history, and I had her phone number. So I reached out to her because she was familiar with my platform and my reputation. She responded, and she's like, okay. Well, actually, she didn't respond to the first email. She didn't respond, and then I followed up. Then she responded and she said, okay, I'll consider it. I'll get back to you. Days passed. She didn't get back to me. I'm getting close to having to make a decision of who's going to be on this panel because we have to promote it. And then I called her and she picked up the phone. I thought it was going to be her assistant or something. She literally picked up the phone. She's like, oh, I have your email in front of me. I'm going to forward it to this person and we'll just try to make it happen. So literally, if I had just sent that one email and just been like, oh, she ignored me, this moment wouldn't have happened. And there was a ripple effect to this too. There was some people in the audience that ended up getting featured in the magazine because they met her at this event. So yes, you have to get over yourself because then that moment wouldn't have happened for others. And that was, you can watch this conversation on YouTube too. It's on YouTube. And then also too, what helped me are mentors. And so I'm from the school of thought where your mentors sort of find you. I like organic mentorship. So they don't have to be this big person. They could be your professors. They can be a cousin or an aunt that has just a little bit more experience than you or has something that you admire, whether that's their character and how they carry themselves or what they do for a living. And once you put yourself, I think, in the places and spaces that allow you to shine at your brightest, that allow you to put your potential on display, people will be drawn to that and they'll want to invest in you. And then also what helped me to really get my mentorship circle, because I really believe mentorship is you should have at least 20. They should be your personal board of directors. And you don't talk to them every day. You talk to them, once a quarter, or sometimes you have ones that you speak to every week, but it's a different relationship with different mentors. But one thing that helped me is just, instead of asking them to be my mentor, because that's weird, right? A first date, you don't ask someone to be your boyfriend or girlfriend. But I asked them, how can I help you? What do you need help with? And so what helps with that is think about what you offer, what skills you have, and don't think because you don't have a lot of experience or connections that you don't have something of value to give to them, because you do. And then that brings me to my next point of not being afraid to ask. Now, don't ask people to be your mentor. I'm against that. Some people might be for that. I'm against that. But you have to ask for what you deserve. That's what I realized in life. It's funny because school doesn't teach you that, right? In school, you do well. You go from first grade to second grade. You pass all your tests. It's just a natural progression. You get rewarded for your hard work. In the real world, you only get what you ask for. You don't get what you deserve. And I learned this lesson really early in my career. So when I was working for a news organization, NBC News, there was a time where I literally had to ask for something that could have almost passed me by. But I was working on a story and there was an email that was sent around the newsroom from the news director, and she's like, if you worked on any of these stories and your name is not listed here, let us know. These were stories that they were submitting to be considered for the Emmys. And so I looked at the list, and of course my name wasn't there, because just to set the scene for you, I was the lowest on the totem pole when it came to the hierarchy of the newsroom. I was just out of college. I was a field producer. That's literally a step above intern. So really it's just well, I could have said to myself oh, I haven't paid my dues yet, or, oh, maybe it's not my time yet. But I figured, what does it hurt to at least ask? Because for this story in particular, I was the first person on the scene. I was there all day. It was a very gruesome story, and I had to screen a lot of the gruesome footage before we said yes or no to putting it on air. It's very intense, a lot of work. And so I asked if I could be put on the story, and she said yes. And only because I asked was I able to now go on to say that I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist. And so you literally have to ask for the things that you deserve. And I had that sort of courage to, not confidence, courage, because I always think about something that someone told me about, like fear, and like confidence being a lack of fear, but courage being feeling that fear and then still doing it. So I had the courage to do it really because I thought about like, who are all, just, there's a quote that Oprah says all the time whenever she comes into a space. She comes as one and stands as 10,000. And so whenever I was in that newsroom, I recognized like there were so many sacrifices for me to be here. And there were so many talented, amazing, incredible people that should be here or should have gotten this chance, but they were shut out. And so who am I to just like hold myself back because I feel like, oh, I'm too low on the totem pole? And another lesson that I learned throughout this journey is that delay is not denial. We're all going through our own different processes of discovery. I remember when I was a senior in college, everybody was applying for jobs and like not internships, but jobs, and like they wanted to work somewhere. I didn't want a job when I graduated. I was applying for grants and fellowships and looking to pitch investors because I had started this company as a sophomore in college and I wanted to continue to run it when I graduated. So, of course, what happened was not necessarily a bad thing. It was a blessing. I got a job offer. And I ended up taking it, but I felt like such a failure at the time because I felt like I told people I'm this entrepreneur, nothing stops me from what I want to do, and now I'm like sort of feeling like I'm just taking a back seat to that. And what I realized is like, no, just because I wasn't doing it straight out the gate doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it eventually. And that's what happened. Eventually, I got the chance to be a full-time entrepreneur, but I, along the way, built credibility in my field through going through corporate media. I worked at NBC and then the Huffington Post, and the skills and the network and the people that I met, it's something that I couldn't have foreseen at that moment. And also another delay sort of was just like trying to get funding for my company. I tried to get funding through investors, which is how startups usually get off the ground. But because I was turned down, I actually was able to figure out a way to make money. And I figured out a revenue model after going through an accelerator, which was like literally the 100th accelerator I applied for. I got denied from all of them. And I finally got into one focused on women and girls and companies that were creating solutions for them, and created a business that had revenue from that point. And so it's all a process, and I want to go back to the story of Vanessa because her story is different than my own. So I was lucky to find my passion and purpose young, but Vanessa DeLuca literally had a whole different career before she went into publishing. For 8 years, she worked in retail, in merchandising, corporate retail. And it wasn't until she was 30 years old that she quit her job, moved back in with her parents, and went to grad school, and then interned. And she's 30 years old, sitting next to 22-year-olds and 23-year-olds, started literally from the bottom. And then now today, she's the editor-in-chief of Essence Magazine. So I would like to just close by really saying, use every resource that you have available to you. Find the resources that you need, and if it doesn't exist, create it. The reason that I am an entrepreneur and the reason that I didn't give up when I was told that I was too young to get an internship or that I needed more experience before starting my own company or stop when investors turned me down, and the reason why I was able to win an Emmy at the age of 22 is not because I'm talented, which yes, I believe I am, but talent is everywhere, opportunity is not, right? It's because I had that opportunity coupled with the confidence and the courage to speak up and push forward no matter what. Thank you all for listening to my story. I'd like to also say thank you to Virginia College for inviting me. It's such an honor to be here. The energy here is just so infectious and inspiring, and each and every one of you. It's been really great to be in your presence. I've like really felt this energy here of like such excitement and new possibilities. So I'm looking forward to your questions. If you have any, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, I saw you first, so maybe some.
What would you say your greatest strength would be? I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of great strengths, but what would you feel your greatest strength is?
In terms of my like skills.
Skill sets, or just, I mean, whatever, however you got to this point, like what did you use the most? Like, what do you feel like you were the strongest at to get here?
I think just my ability to just like constantly dig and find things. Like a lot of the opportunities that I found early on, people didn't tell me about, but they were things that I found. So like even the first internship that I did, I was like 17. I was trying to do a paid internship because I was like, I can't work for free anymore. And I was at the printer in the like high school newspaper club. And this girl was holding up the printer. It's printing out this thing that was 50 pages and had all these companies listed on the side. I'm like, what is that you're printing? She's like, oh, it's an application for this paid internship program for high school students. I'm like, what? Nobody told me about this. And literally, I'm like, when's the deadline? She's like, tomorrow. And I ran around the whole school, got the application done, and got into the program. So like kind of like combination of that nosiness and like being relentless, because like there's so many points where I could have shut down my company or been like, this is too much work. But it's just like that fuel that I had was like, yes, my passion, but also the desire to prove people wrong too. And like people who said I couldn't do it or said that it doesn't make sense or I don't understand this or that. I'm like, all right, let me just show you, because I'm going to do it. I'm more of a show person than like a present person. Is the mic working? Oh, okay. I was inspired really because when I first started, I had a personal blog, and this is before Twitter and before Facebook. So I'm taking literally on this little digital camera, because this is before smartphones too, pictures of like my daily life and like posting them on this blog that I had. And so my daily life was not like the typical daily life of a regular teenager, because I was meeting like celebrities and politicians. I was at these like high profile events. And so I just wanted to share that, just to show like I'm a regular girl from Brooklyn who just did this. I had no connections. Nobody like really gave me like the blueprint. I'm doing it. And I wanted to show other people like you can do it too, because I'm just like a regular girl. Then when I was in a magazine, I did some teen modeling with like 17 and teen people, and they put my MySpace page in the contributor section with like a fun fact about me, and then literally my page blew up. And I got all of these questions from girls, and I realized they're obsessed with like celebrities, and like they need to not be obsessed with celebrities. They need to be obsessed, I think, more so with these executives and publicists behind the scenes. But there was no, like how I was in the magazine and they all then suddenly looked to me, there was no platform or anything that was showcasing the stories of these women because they weren't celebrities. And so I was like, I need to start something, some type of platform to elevate the stories of women who are powerful and inspiring, but you don't know who they are because they're so busy doing the work behind the scenes. And I also then I was in college, and I learned about the women's movement and the lack of women in positions of power and gender bias and like the pay gap. And I'm like, what? And I'm like this girl who like believed like I could do anything. Women are powerful and amazing. I never saw us as unequal. And then when I realized that that's the reality that existed for us, that like our ambition wasn't necessarily going to be rewarded when we like did the work, when we got the degree, when we did everything that we had to do, I wanted to also create not just a platform that told stories, but a platform that gave access to resources. And like, I'm from the school of thought, like you need to be in the room, right? Being in rooms like this, going to networking events, but you can't be in the room if you don't know the room exists. And because I was that type of person that was always researching things, I always knew about every panel and conference and things that were happening related to my industry. And I was literally obsessed with this. So I was like, I'm going to create a database of networking events and panels and conferences happening across the country to give access to the resources that you need in order to actually take those next steps steps and become who you want to become. And then also like just different programs. There's so many programs I knew about that could help people that people didn't know about. And they existed in like these little silos. So I'm like, there needs to be like a yellow pages for opportunity. And that's literally like the moment where I'm like, all right, I just need to make this website. And like one side is media, the other side is like a database of resources. I love how you didn't wait to be called on. You just gotta. I would say, first of all, don't try to ignore it. Embrace it, feel it, cry, do whatever you have to do to get it out. Go to people that you trust and talk to them about it, and remind yourself again, like, why you're doing what you do. And that should serve as the inspiration for you to keep going. That idea that the power within you is greater than whatever is in front of you, whatever problem it is. And you need to rise above, because if you rise above and fulfill your mission and fulfill your passion, then you have the freedom or the power or the capital that you need to transform other people's lives around you. And so that's something else that keeps me motivated and focused. Like, yes, I might have to miss certain things in like my loved ones' lives because I'm working, but I'm gonna work until I get to a point where like they don't have to work anymore. And whatever is happening in my personal life, for me, what helps is to bury myself in the work sometimes, or to like reset and just clear my mind and just say like, I'm working on something that's big and major. And so whatever is happening, like when my parents were going through that divorce, it was hard. And I was living in the same house with them too. And so it affected my energy. So what I did is just like, I would just spend more time in my office or with my friends and like people that gave me energy. And then eventually I moved to Atlanta, which was like a whole other thing. But I think if you just go back to your why and like why you're doing what you do, even though that chaos is happening or you're going through low points in your personal life, it can serve as that motivation or push that you need to do what you have to do. And like, just take yourself out of it and think about like, if I do this, how will that make someone's life better? Someone other than just me. Okay, I don't know who to call on now. I would say just try everything. Don't be like, think about like, what is it that I'm good at? For me, what helped early in the early stages is creating a vision board. So like, you might not you might not know what you want to do, but what maybe you want to feel like, what life you want to build, what house you want to live in, what you want things to look like in your ideal everyday life, and create that. And then kind of work backwards from there. And think about like, what can I do to get to that point? And just try everything and keep putting yourself out there. And like I said, sometimes it's hard for us to recognize what our gifts are because they come to us so naturally. So think about also, while you're doing your vision board, ask your friends, poll your friends, post a status on Facebook right now. Like, what are 3 things that you think of when you hear my name? And let your community and your network and your people tell you, like, you're really good at this. You might not have even thought that it was a skill because you're like, I do that in my sleep. But that could be your calling. And just like, constantly thinking about it and pursuing it and being active and vocal about pursuing it, you'll come across it eventually. Yeah, right here. I mean, we've been here all along. Right now, it's hot and trendy to empower women and talk about them, but we're just continuing to do what we do, which is tell the stories of women and let women tell their own stories too. A majority of the media is run by men. A lot of the articles that we read every day that shapes our perceptions of things are written by men. And we're a platform of all women writers. We're a platform that continues to just tell the stories of women who are pushing forward, pushing against the obstacles and barriers. So we're just continuing to do what we've always done, and support and uplift and shine a light on the women that are doing the work, that are running for office. As far as like exactly like new things we're doing, nothing yet, because we're like the type of company, if we're going to do something, it's going to be meaningful. It's not going to be trendy or just us hopping on the bandwagon to something. And so something that we're really thinking about and we're making an effort to get funded, we're looking for grants for, is to launch an investigative reporting series, because I just really feel like truth and information just like opens up so many things and pathways and can enlighten people. And if it comes from women especially, it can be transformative. So like that's what we're focused on, is launching our investigative reporting unit.
What keeps you motivated and purpose when it's tough times and struggles? Because you can lose sight of your vision, you trying hard to push, but you come with the struggle also. So who keeps you motivated and keep going?
That goes back to my mentors, who, again, I don't speak to them every day, but I see them, and I see them doing the work and pushing through. And I know that they're going through struggles probably even bigger than mine, because they're older than me and they have more on their plate, more responsibilities, more on their shoulders, and they're still showing up, and they still like are just doing the things that they have to do. Something else is just keeping reminders around me constantly. I'm a big quote person. I don't know if you could tell. We actually have these quotes that we're, I think, going to give out at some point, a couple of them. I don't know what the logistics are with that. But anyway, just keeping reminders around me helps, like those physical reminders, and like just curating a world where if I'm discouraged, like it could open Instagram or open Facebook and see something that's gonna like bring me back. And so with social media, a lot of times we kind of like go towards the negative, or go towards like, oh, like just the funny memes and stuff. But like follow somebody that inspires you, that can empower you. And if you follow people that make you feel a little jealous, use that as fuel. Like, okay, I'm like feeling like I should be doing what this person is doing. Well, then like figure out the ways to do the work so that you can get those opportunities. And just like, literally it's something that's internal and inside me. Literally, I feel like I have no choice. And that's really when you know that you found that purpose and you're following what you're supposed to be doing, because you feel it inside. And it's like, even on the days that I don't want to wake up or I don't want to get out of bed, like it'll be something in me, or I'll get a call or something will happen. And it's like, you have to do this. You have to get up. Or I'll check my email and it's like, oh, wow, I have like this amazing opportunity. Or I'll get, a lot of times what helps me keep going too is just like seeing the impact of the work that I'm doing. And so getting a tweet or getting an email from one of our readers that said like, this event changed my life because I met this person, or this article completely reshaped how I think about how I approach work. And even though I hate it and I don't want to be there, I've created now a plan of action to get out of it. So all of those little things, and it's going back to that thought of like, it's bigger than me. And so it's like, it's not about my struggles or how I feel or what I'm going through in this moment, because this moment is small compared to the largeness of my mission and what I'm aiming to get done.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
And we'll have you pick the lucky person instead of me for the last question.
I saw Michelle's hand up back there.
How do you think millennial women should measure success?
The funny thing about that is I have a mentor who literally does not believe in success. She believes in always evolving and always constantly pushing the needle forward. I think success is different for everybody, but millennial women specifically, I think they get too hung up on sometimes the accolades and the outside credentials, and like, you know, they need to focus on like, success to me is really freedom and having the power to choose what you do with your life. And that involves a lot of things. It depends on like your socioeconomic status. It depends on what you have access to, things like that. So for me, true success is freedom. And then even greater than that, the power to give that freedom to others. And so that's really what I think millennial women should be focused on in terms of defining success. And actually, we get a bad rap, millennials, for like taking the shortcut and whatnot, but I don't really think that we're taking shortcuts. I think we're literally in search of our passion. We grew up being told, growing up on Disney, that we could be anything we wanted. And so now we're trying to find that. And like adulthood is hard, and we're realizing it doesn't come as easily as it seemed when we were kids. And that sometimes things happen that don't necessarily, that are out of your control, that you have to then like navigate around. And it's just like we're learning those lessons. So it seems like we're creating shortcuts because we're like going down a path, we're like, no, I don't like this. Oh, going down this path, I don't like this. But when they find that thing that drives them, that is their purpose, then they are committed, then they're consistent, and they will see it through. Thank you.